I think Russia, China had long recognized that this was a problem. China quickly caught on, but it was India and Brazil where they were lukewarm about this. But not anymore. They now recognize, damn, these Americans really they want to hurt us. They want to control us, and they're not having it. They are standing up and pushing back. But they thought that they could massage this and work with the United States. And oh yeah, they're not so bad. No, yeah, actually, we're that goddamn bad. We're bad. We're evil. We don't have your best interest at heart. And the same with Brazil a month ago at the BRICS summit, and in the midst of it, getting dinged, hit with tariffs, not because of its economic policies, but because of domestic politics. So now, where Russia was the visionary in this with respect to BRICS. Recognize we got to carve out, be independent. Right now, with the dollar as the international reserve currency, the United States is in a position to punish other countries that don't do what the United States wants it to do. And with economic sanctions, with cutting them off from lines of credit, and they were trying to, and that's where BRICS emerged initially as an idea, as a concept, but they really hadn't fleshed it out. It's a skeleton with no meat on the bones, no muscle, no sinew. But the start of the special military operation and then the attempt to kill Russia with sanctions awakened not just Russia, but awakened China, to a lesser extent India. India hasn't awakened to this until just last week when Trump hit them with tariffs. And not just them, but this is why other countries that are joining BRICS, Iran, Vietnam, they're recognizing we got to break free of this Western hegemony, this U.S. controlled system. And that their effort to separate out of that is going to be a source of conflict and potentially war. The United States is not going to give up its control if it can help it. But there are economic realities intruding. And we talked a little bit about those on Friday, that the United States continues to try to sell its debt. Hey, we want to borrow money from y'all. And more countries are going, I don't think so. You're a deadbeat. We're not going to lend you any more money. So what we're witnessing is this disruption of the international order that has basically, first it was controlled by Europe, and then the control moved to the United States after World War II. But it's coming to an end. I'm not saying it's going to end next week or next month, but we're watching the systems beginning, the U.S. financial systems beginning to fall apart. The global South system, BRICS system, is beginning to come into being. The United States defense industry is almost frozen right now because China said, oh, you want to attack us? All right, we're not going to give you any more of this. Good luck with that. And there is not an alternative. It's not like they can come up with an alternative. The same with magnets that are critical for not only electric vehicles, but some other aircraft and other electronic systems. Turns out that India also has some leverage because of what are called API, the precursors for producing final finished pharmaceuticals. They get a lot of that from India or from China, and then India processes it and turns it into final items that are then shipped to the United States. If that gets cut off, China and India combined could probably cause the deaths of millions of Americans simply by cutting off pharmaceuticals that these people rely upon. What you've seen out of this is, again, the Trump administration, just awful. It's like they've gone out of their way to see what they can do to piss off the Indians. First, Trump's taking credit for India and for bringing it in. I'm the peacemaker. I brought peace to India and Pakistan. No such thing. And India has consistently said, what are you talking about? It's like you taking credit for that. When you looked out in the east this morning, did you see the sunrise, Nima? I did that. That was me. That's Donald Trump, okay? You're taking credit for crap that he didn't do. And then when then they hit them with the tariffs. And now, and so India said, oh, those F-35 jets we were going to buy, forget about it. There's some other planes we're going to have. We don't want those either. Oh, our defense minister was going to come meet with Pete Hegseth. Our guy's busy. We don't have time for that. So India's waking up and say, okay, two can play at this game. We're not a bunch of chumps. I really thought that with Brazil becoming the head of BRICS, that it was going to be an uneventful year, that it'd probably go backwards, that wouldn't make any progress. Because remember, the ultimate target in this now is China. And it's not because China has become a military power intent on conquering the world. It started under Barack Obama 10 to 12 years ago. Once the realization that, hey, this Chinese economy, they're no longer making a bunch of cheap crap that breaks easily. They've become a genuine industrial power. And in fact, they're better than us. You can go into literature and into film, and you can see the storyline where there's, let's say, a coach who coaches an athlete up, but the coach is always superior in terms of strength, size, speed. But there comes a point where the mentor or the mentoree surpasses the coach. Now, a normal person would celebrate that you've coached somebody to the point that now they've become better than you. They've exceeded what you could do. But that's not the West. The West wants to subjugate, to control, to keep down. And with China being viewed as becoming this economic power, by God, we can't have that. And so we have to declare China's a threat. China's a military, they're an empire that's trying to devour the world. And it's all projection. It's all the stuff we, the United States, have been doing for the last 80 years, for God's sake. China doesn't have a record of going out and attacking other countries. And they say, oh, China's stolen our technology. What the hell do you think the United States just it's the old-fashioned way. We just worked really hard and we were really ingenious. We're especially smart, not like the rest of please. It's something like Bill Gates with Microsoft is just another case in point. He stole that from Steve Jobs. But he's celebrated as a wealthy billionaire and a guy we got to respect. Bill Gates is emblematic of what the United States is or has become. So what we're witnessing is the realignment of the international political economic order. And it's going to be a bumpy ride. There's hardly any trade anymore between Russia and the United States. So tariffs, those are ineffective. And his attempts to punish countries that have had close relationships with Russia through BRICS, especially India, Brazil, and China, all Trump has done is energize them to dig in deeper to make BRICS more effective, more powerful, more potent. If you would have asked me a year ago that looking into 2025, BRICS was going to be under the control of Brazil. And I would have said that's going to be a year of inactivity and maybe going backwards. Turned out just the opposite. Once Trump hit Lula with tariffs, not over economic reasons, but for domestic political reasons in Brazil, it galvanized Lula into say, hey, we're going to push back. And so they're making more steps to it grow independent of the U.S. ability to control via the dollar what goes on in those countries. So Trump has no leverage here. It's all in Putin's favor. The constant portrayal of Hamas is a terrorist organization. Okay, I went back and looked at the actual statistics. Hamas, what's the definition of terrorism? The use of violence against civilians for political purposes. The vast majority of what they call Hamas terrorism has been directed against Israeli military security, as well as settlers encroaching upon Palestinian land. Go back and look at the actual statistics. Hamas is not this major terrorist organization. All Hamas is freedom fighting group of people wanting to have control over their own land. They're being encroached upon by settlers. They're having their land and taken by invaders. The fact that Hamas is fighting back against that, we want to say they've used the label terrorist to discredit them. That's not what they are. They're fighting for human dignity. They're fighting in the same way that many Native American Indian tribes fought back against encroaching settlers. And sadly, it may end the same way for the Palestinians as it did for the Cherokee, the Sioux, the Iroquois, the Apache. We got legions of Native Americans that some estimates is many, it was in the millions that died in my country. And we've glossed it over and pretended, oh, no big deal. But that's exactly what this Zionist leader Netanyahu is all about. They have the ability to continue to kill and starve tens of thousands of Palestinians, but there's still enough there that can fight back, and they're going to be killing Israelis. It may be at some point Israel might be able to prevail in this regard, but again, Israel wouldn't be able to do this were it not for the complicity of the rest of the world standing by doing nothing, with the exception of the Houthis. The Houthis are the only country actively trying to do something to stop Israel. Now you're getting a few countries who say, okay, we're going to stop shipping weapons to Israel. Okay, that's a good start. Let's go the whole route. Isolate them. Cut off all economic and diplomatic ties to Israel. Don't allow Israel to continue to live among the civilized world. Shun them. Until that happens, we're going to continue to be getting the story every day about they killed another 39, they killed another 90. The pictures of dead children will continue to fill our screens. And the Western approach is to demonize Hamas. They're a terrorist organization. I tell you what, compare Hamas, take every single attack against Israelis and foreigners who were in Israel over the last 25 years, take every single one of those. And Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, with al-Shara, has carried out more acts of violence in 5 years than Hamas has in 25 years. And yet, hey, we're sending our diplomats to Syria. We're hugging al-Shara. Stop with this bullshit about terrorism. Oh, they're discredited because they're terrorists. No, this has nothing to do with that. Excuse my strong language, but it just infuriates me that the double standard, the hypocrisy of the West on this is just staggering. We have terrorism's not the issue. The issue is Hamas is standing in the way of these Zionist crazies who think that they have a right to push the Palestinians into the sea and take control of their land. And Hamas has the balls to stand up and say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to fight for our rights. And that's where it stands. I grant you, Trump's approach is probably more extreme than that of the Biden administration. And you could make the case that I don't think there were any red lines for Biden, but Trump is complete enabler of the Zionist project. Biden may have had some limitations on that. The result has been the same. You've got the official statistics of 60,000 plus dead Palestinians, I think is extremely low. It could be upwards of 200,000 dead. We don't have any more air defense systems to give them. The weapons that we're promising that we'll sell to Ukraine via the Europeans will buy it from us and then they'll give it to Ukraine. Some of those weapon systems won't be produced for 7 years. Trump's going at a time when the reality is the United States is weaker economically than at any time in his first or second term. And the part of why Trump has been using the tariffs and sanctions, Ukraine is in a way is a bit of a sideshow, because what he's really trying to do is disrupt BRICS, because the demand for dollars is dropping. And one of the reasons for that is these BRICS countries, which have significant economies, are shifting their purchases. They're not using dollars. Or in some cases, what you find is the Chinese are holding some dollars that they're using to fund projects in Africa, but that's not benefiting the United States. So, from an economic standpoint, BRICS is the real threat to the United States. And that may be what preoccupies Trump, but he's not, as he told Zelensky, you don't have any Trump cards. Donald Trump doesn't have any cards either to play with Vladimir Putin. Trump is a different person in private as opposed to this buffoon clown that we see in public. He does focus in on people and he does ask questions. And he is much more, say, accommodating. He's not this abrasive personality that we see on the television. And Putin knows that based upon his previous meeting with Trump that took back when was it 2017, 2018. Trump at that time was under the cloud of Russiagate and accused of being a puppet of Putin. And now that it's been exposed, that was a Hillary Clinton plot carried out with the help of the CIA and the FBI. Trump's not as susceptible to being accused of that. There's still a few out there making that accusation, but it no longer carries weight. So Putin does know that Trump's a different person in private when all the cameras are off. So maybe he's counting that he can reach out to that Donald Trump and talk some sense. Putin believes that if he can simply talk face to face with Donald Trump, he might be able to persuade him to say, hey, look, do you really understand what's going on here? I want to make sure that you understand our position, where we, Russia, are coming from. I wouldn't be surprised if Putin makes that as one of his points to Trump, reminding him that says, we don't need to be enemies. We don't need to be at each other's throat because there was a time when we were collaborators in fighting a great evil. But he's going to make it clear, Russia's not the evil one here. There are areas, despite the antagonism of the United States towards Russia over the last 25 years, it's worth noting that I think it started in 2004 that Russia and the United States cooperated closely on a space program. And in fact, Russia was a critical component in that program and in enabling the United States to get back and forth from the space station. Without the Russians, the U.S. would have been just spectators watching. So there is, Putin may be hoping that he can build upon that kind of past cooperation. I did make the point that the date of the meeting is significant because August 15th is the date that the government of Japan surrendered in World War II. That marks the sort of official date of the ending of the war in the Pacific. And as Russia played a role in that, in fact, you could almost make the case that Truman's decision to drop the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki had more to do with trying to send a message to Russia to keep Russia from getting too much credit for the end of the war. But Russia had promised President Roosevelt at the Potsdam Conference or the Yalta Conference in February of 1945 that as soon as Russia had settled the war with Germany, it would turn its focus and come assist the United States in taking out Japan, which just a few days after the bombing of Hiroshima on August 6th, Russia invaded Manchuria and really caused a significant retreat of the Japanese. You can build a case that if Truman had not dropped the atomic weapon, that the war would have come to an end in any event with the help of Russia. But again, the animus towards Russia had already started then. The West is not interested in a peaceful accommodation with Russia. They want to destroy it. And I wish it wasn't so dark, but I see nothing in the action of the West. And then here, just in the last 3 months, we saw the failed attempt to kill Putin as he was flying to Kursk. Then the peace talks are supposed to take place in Istanbul between Russia and Ukraine with Western intelligence help, launches Operation Spiderweb, which is a direct attack on Russian strategic bombers. Then 2 weeks later, the decapitations in Iran that are using the same kind of tactics that were employed in Russia. People think that those are somehow unconnected. They're not. This is a bigger, darker picture than many people want to admit. NATO has embarked on a steady campaign to boost the military prowess of Ukraine. The West has been involved, was directly involved with overthrowing the democratically elected government of Ukraine in 2014 and aiding and abetting the Ukrainian efforts to start attacking Russian interests. You've had that steady buildup. You've had the rejection of the draft treaty, which Vladimir Putin presented to Joe Biden in December of 2021, an agreement to secure Russia in the future going forward. You had the sabotage of the peace talks in Istanbul, end of March, 1st of April of 2022 by the West. You've had several major terrorist attacks in Russia, from the killing everyone, the murder of the daughter of Alexander Dugina, Daria Dugina, Alexander Dugin's daughter, the attack on Crocus City Hall, which killed around 100, I think over 135 people. You've had the attack on the train. You've had the attempt to kill Vladimir Putin. You had the staging of a war crime at Bucha that was done by British MI6, where they actually picked bodies up, brought them there, planted them around, trying to blame Russia, even though Russia had withdrawn from the place. But you had Putin's gesture of his goodwill, trying to say, hey, we're serious about this. We'll withdraw our tanks that were then surrounding Kiev. When we go through this litany and then go back to, I didn't even begin to talk about the Minsk II agreement. And this current situation we're in is very simple. This is Minsk II on steroids, because at the Battle of Debaltseve, which was in January, February of 2015, the Russians defeated the Ukrainian military, and Germany and the West was panicked, and they hurriedly managed to persuade Putin to call off, to intervene with the authorities in the Donbass and Donetsk and Luhansk to take their foot off the throat of the Ukrainians. And only later did Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, admit that this was a ploy. It was a sham. It was done to buy time for Ukraine to rebuild its army. They had no interest whatsoever in actually living in peace with the Russians. This is the destruction of Russia is what they're all about. And I feel like a Paul Revere or Jeremiah the prophet standing on the wall warning. There is no accommodation to be had with the West, unfortunately. And those that believe that, okay, put that on your list with Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and other mythical creatures. What we've seen is lies and duplicity and deception on the part of the United States throughout this process. And now, again, here was just last week when they're sending Witkoff to talk peace to Putin, Trump signs an executive order declaring Russia an enemy. Damn it. What else did you need to know? For God's sake, you're an enemy. And in tandem with that, then the United States is directly meddling, interfering with Armenia and Azerbaijan, presented, we're trying to bring them together for peace. Horse shit. That's not what this is about. It is about surrounding Russia so they can take it apart.